everyone, and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. Apologies for the false start there with the first version. You'll notice there's 3 of us instead of 4, and that's because Scott Paterson's Wi-Fi definitely didn't want him to podcast tonight. They must be waiting until he's got a less positive thing to talk about. Tonight I'm joined by 2 of our very happy contributors after this weekend. First up, we have Scott Cameron. How you doing, Scott?
I'm delighted, Craig. As I said on my social media, the 4th post Old Firm podcast that I've done, and finally a happy and positive one. So I'm really looking forward to this, mate.
I thought you were going to say you're delighted because Scott Paterson wasn't on anymore, but we'll leave that one there. We're also joined by Ben. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing good, yeah. Feeling much more positive than I was a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. And Ben, tell everyone your little story about when you actually watched the game and found out the result.
I'm still on a bit of a high, as I was saying to you before we started the pod. It was my daughter's birthday yesterday, so I was out all day. So I turned the phone off and didn't find out the score or anything. I watched it today. So it's quite fresh to me, yeah. So it's quite disciplined.
Yeah, I have no idea how you can hold off for 24 hours and finding out an Old Firm game result. I'd struggle to not know for 5 minutes. So fair play to you. I definitely couldn't do it. Obviously, Rangers won 3-0 yesterday at Ibrox. We can now say that because Ben has actually watched the game. So Rangers won 3-0, and it was a much more positive Old Firm game than we've had so far this season, albeit it was the first win that we have had this season out of 6, which is obviously not good enough. We'll come on to talk about that. We'll come on to talk about some of the players that made their mark yesterday and what that potentially means for their future. We'll talk about away fans or no away fans. We'll start looking more ahead to the summer rebuild and summer refresh that Michael Beale has been speaking about more in depth after yesterday's game. So plenty to talk about. If you've got any thoughts, if you've got any comments on our opinions, fire them into the comments section, and we'll make sure to bring up as many relevant ones as we can. First of all, though, Scott, I'll start with yourself. Just just over 24 hours after the full-time whistle was blown. What are your reflections on the game?
I'm just really happy that we've got something positive to take into the summer. Basically, you know, I mean, I think I'd spoke to yourself yesterday, and I think the pressure that would have been put on to Michael Beale and ahead of what's going to come in the summer would have only intensified. You know, I mean, I know it was a game that there was no trophies up for grabs and the league title was already done, but just getting that everything's been positive on social media. You know, I mean, it's 24 hours of Rangers Twitter, for example, and it's been positive. That doesn't happen very often, so long may that continue. So great. It was a good day out. The sun was shining, and Rangers scored the first goal in an Old Firm game for the first time in a very long time. So very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that first goal in the Old Firm game is something that we've spoken about. I know myself and yourself, Scott, have spoken about that quite in depth in previews to previous Old Firm games and how important it is to make our mark early on in these games. And I think more often than not, Ben, in previous ones, we've seen Celtic take the initiative in Old Firm games and get that early goal, and we know how difficult it is then for us to start to try and turn it around. How important do you think that early goal was in setting the tone, and I guess the performance in that first 10-15 minutes where it's probably a level of performance I've not really seen from this team so far this season?
Yeah, I think it was absolutely crucial. I think we went out there, we set the tone. In previous games, we've let them come and we've let them play our game, whether it's at Hampden, whether it's at their place or at Ibrox. You know, even in the January game at Ibrox, we let them come, we let them dictate it, and we watched them play a game of football. Whereas, you know, yesterday, I almost said today there for myself, but yesterday we really, we went after them. We showed them that they're in a game. And we showed them that Rangers are here to turn up. You know, this wasn't them coming to dance around and celebrate them winning the league. This was us coming to show them that they're going to be in a fight from now into next season.
Yeah, Scott, I think Ben makes a good point there in terms of the attitude that we showed and pressing Celtic a lot higher. I think for me, it was more the style of play against Celtic that I had expected since Michael Beale came in. I don't think we had seen that necessarily in the previous 4 Old Firm games that Michael Beale's been in charge of since he returned. Probably the January one was the closest that we got to it. If we're thinking about over the course of those 4 games, how pleased were you to see that, and do you think that's a blueprint we'll see moving forward?
Well, I think tactically, Michael Beale. I mean, I've been critical of certain elements of what he's done since he came in, but I think yesterday he got it spot on. To be honest with you, the middle 3, I wasn't massive on it, but he got it spot on. You know, I thought they all done their job superbly well, and it allowed Todd Cantwell ahead of them. I mean, I think Todd Cantwell ahead of them was just superb, and that's I'd said last week I wanted them 10, 15 yards further forward, and that's what we got more often than not. But I think tactically the personnel may be different, but I think what he's found is that is the way to get at their back line, to be honest with you, and I think it might, as I say, might not be Jack, it might not be Lundstrom, it might be 2 different midfield players, and it will certainly be 2 different forward players in place of Matondo and Sakala, but the sort of blueprint, particularly I think even in the away games against them, I think that's how to play against them. We almost that flat 3 in the middle of the park, So well done to Michael Beale, and I think it in that press that set the tempo for what happened early in the game. It got the crowd. I mean, for what was essentially a dead rubber Old Firm match, the crowd was with the team, but the more the team had that tempo and energy from the start of the game, and that gets everybody on board, and then you get the early goal, and it just steamrollers for there. So to get back to your point, it was spot on tactically, and I think it's positive for the games moving forward.
Yeah, Ben, I think it's always good to get a win against our biggest rivals, and it's even better when it's as comprehensive as it was yesterday. I think when I think back to how I was feeling in the build up to the game, I wasn't that fussed heading into yesterday. If I was completely honest, I think the game itself, I knew it didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of trophies and league titles and cups and that side of things. I wanted to see a performance. I wanted to see us put down a bit of a marker. I think there's a psychological side of things when it comes to if you lose or don't win an Old Firm game for a full season. So I think that was really beneficial. I wanted to bring in this comment because we are wholly positive, I think, on this as a trio, and I think we will be largely positive as we talk through this podcast. But M Ward comes into the comments and he says, "Why wait to turn up in this game? It's ridiculous. Why can anyone be happy after waiting that long for a better effort? False players looking to save their arses." Can you see the other side of that coin? I guess when I was at the game yesterday, I wasn't quite as high as a lot of people were on the back of the goals. I thought the atmosphere in the stadium was really good, and we're going to talk about whether we think away fans should be included going forward or not. But in terms of how some people reacted, I did think it was a bit over the top given the context of the situation. But do you think I'm being harsh there, or what do you think of Ward's comment?
No, I think I'm mixed on it. I mean, I'm delighted that I'll be delighted we beat them in anything, but I'm also still have that disappointment from how the season's been. But I am now at this stage where, it's like the stages of grief. I'm at acceptance that the title's gone, but I'm looking for encouragement. I'm looking for us to, I'm looking for the team. I'm looking for Michael Beale to show us that there is a path back to success. And by doing what we did yesterday, it's by no means says that everything is fixed or that we're going to win the league next season. But it is encouraging, to show that some of the players that will be there next season, because some of them were on the field, have grown, and we'll get on to talk about certain players, but have grown into it, have tasted success against them, have seen what it's like, and some of them hadn't done that, and the others that hadn't done it for an awful long time. So, yes, we're all disappointed, and I can see that point of view, and to a certain extent agree with it, but I'm trying to look to the future now, and I'm trying to see where we're going, and if the direction we're going in is with some of the performances that we got yesterday, getting that on a more consistent basis and having better players to be able to deliver that. Then the signs are looking good. We can't change what's been, but we can change what's coming.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I probably would agree with you on most of that. I think that's probably where I'm sitting at this moment in time, looking forward to the season coming to an end, looking forward to seeing what I think will be a significant change over the summer, not just in playing personnel, we're also seeing it in the boardroom as well, and I think that brings with it a lot of a different approach to things, hopefully both in the transfer market and how the club does its day-to-day business. It's a club that's been stabilised in recent years, and we've got to be thankful for that. It's now, how do we continue to push forward? How do we continue to get that growth that we're looking at? And how do we get back on top in Scottish football, ultimately, which is what we all want. Scott, Michael Beale spoke after the game yesterday, and he spoke a lot about the work he's been putting into the recruitment side of things. I believe a lot of us, if not all Rangers fans, were viewing the last 5 games of the season post-split as being the test for some players who hadn't had a great deal of game time or hadn't had a fair opportunity to show their value or their worth in the team. There's plenty of players in there. I'm going to start taking them sort of one by one and talking about how we thought they played yesterday, but also where we see them in future, if we do see them as part of the Rangers starting lineup or the Rangers squad at all next season, or if actually we think their time at the club is coming to an end. I'm going to come to Robbie McCrorie. First of all, it's the goalkeeper. It's a natural place to start. 4th clean sheet out of 4 starts for Rangers. 2 of those games against Celtic. He couldn't have hoped for a better start to life as a Ranger in terms of his first team games. He'll be disappointed he's not had many first team games. I would be surprised if he's not a bit gutted that he's not played more games, especially this season when we've seen our trials and tribulations in goal. What did you make of Robbie McCrorie's performance yesterday? Did it instill you with more confidence? The way he was standing at the edge of the box much of the time, he was trying to anticipate the ball in behind the defence, and I thought that worked really well. And so let's start with his performance yesterday and how you viewed that.
I think he's done fantastically well in the 2 games, given the fact that he'd barely played any football for probably about 18 months prior to that. I think he would have been involved prior to the split, basically, if he hadn't been injured. I think Michael Beale would have given him his opportunity, wouldn't have given his opportunity earlier. But I mean, he's in his mid-20s now, and I think that's two Old Firm games that he's came in and he's not showed any nerves. He looks quite commanding. He's not scared to come out. A Rangers goalkeeper coming off the line to collect crosses. I think that he doesn't look overawed by the players that are in front of him. He doesn't look like a young goalkeeper that's lacking. I mean, I think that's spot on. He doesn't look like a keeper that's lacking confidence and unsure of himself. So I think he clearly backs his ability to do his job. And I mean, 4 clean sheets out of 4 with 2 against them is, I don't think there'll be many Rangers goalkeepers have had 2 of their first four games against Celtic, and you've kept clean sheets. So good on him, because I think Robbie McCrorie's at an age where he has to be challenging to be the Rangers number 1, or he has to go out somewhere and be a number 1. that's where I believe that his career's at that sort of. So he's grabbed the opportunity so far. Hope he gets the last 3 matches, and then it's game on in the summer. But well played. I don't think he's had any worldy saves. He had a really good save off, I think it was O'Reilly, through, and he's put it over the bar with a nice save. But he just looks confident, and I think that's to his credit for a guy that's not played a lot, and I think probably should have been out on loan to have got games rather than just sitting on the bench or sitting in the stand. But I think he's done himself no harm at all the last couple of weeks, Craig.
Yeah, I think he's a player that's definitely grabbed this opportunity each time it's arisen. He's probably been a bit unfair in terms of the amount of confidence other managers are put in. I mean, even Michael Beale, to a certain extent, so far since he's came in, Robbie McCrorie's probably been a bit unfortunate that they've not put more faith in him from that perspective and given him more game time. Ben, I think Scott's right in terms of it's probably now or never for Robbie McCrorie and his Rangers career. Michael Beale made an interesting point last night in one of his post-match interviews around Robbie McCrorie is now the same age Alan McGregor was when Alan McGregor started to cement his first team slot. I think that was good to give Rangers fans context of how young Robbie McCrorie still is. Michael Beale also gave the context of Alan McGregor had been out on a few loans beforehand as well. There's a certain view that fans have, especially Rangers fans probably, of how the loan system works and maybe its lack of success for our players, I think it would be fair to say. But that can be completely different for goalkeepers. There's obviously only one goalkeeper that can play at a time in games for a team, and that comes with its own issues in terms of trying to blood new goalkeepers or up-and-coming goalkeepers that way, and the loan system has to be used to our benefit. I wanted to bring in this comment from Glasgow Rangers Nation. Said McCrorie comes for crosses, commands his area, plays sweeper keeper, reads the game. If he plays more this season, we have more points. Miles better than McGregor. I wanted to, start to look ahead to next season. I believe Robbie McCrorie will play the remainder of the games this season, although I would expect Alan McGregor to have a farewell of some kind in the next couple of games. I don't know if that'll be a second half appearance at some point or if he'll get the full final game. It'd be interesting to see how that's done. It'd be interesting to see if sentimentality comes into it at any point. It did last season when it came to the Scottish Cup, but it'll be interesting to see if it does this time around. In terms of Robbie McCrorie, do you think he has shown enough to be Rangers number one next season? Do you think actually these last 5 games give him enough of a chance to give you confidence that he could be a number one for a season, or do you expect a more experienced goalkeeper to be coming in over the summer?
I think he's done his chances no harm at all. I do expect us to be bringing in a more experienced keeper, but he has proven that he is, at a level over the 4 games. I would say, I know there's quite a gap between the games, but I think he's proven that he is of a level to be challenging. It's very hard, I think, right now to make that final decision, and I'm glad that I don't have to. I would hope that he gets the next 3 games, or certainly. I'd maybe bring Al McGregor on the last game for last 15 minutes or last half an hour. But other than that, I think it's important that we're utilising the time and giving these players the opportunity. That's what I wanted these last 5 games to be about, is giving opportunities to players that we need to make decisions on, and the rest is up to them. And Robbie has grasped that opportunity so far. I think his commanding of his box, as Glasgow Rangers Nation says, was very impressive to me. He's very assertive. I thought that the save that Scott was talking about, I wouldn't say worldy, but I would probably say Scott said it was a nice save. I think it was probably a wee bit better than that. I thought it was a very good save. And I thought coming for crosses, and I thought just everything in general, he looked very assured. So he has done his chances no harm, and it's difficult, but it doesn't make you think that you're so. There was at one stage when we hadn't seen him, you were thinking, oh, right, do we need to sign 3 keepers in the summer? Do we need to sign 2 keepers in the summer? Now you're at the stage where you definitely only need to sign 1. I would agree that he's at the stage of the career. Like to me, he's too good a goalkeeper. Now, whether he's good enough for Rangers is one thing, but he's too good a goalkeeper to be a number 2 his whole career. I think he deserves to go out and play as a number 1 for someone. If that's not at Rangers, then, well, that's not at Rangers. But right now, he's done very well. He's impressed me quite a lot.
Yeah, Scott, I'm going to come to you on this one as well. Probably, like Ben says, he's Robbie McCrorie's done himself no harm with these performances, and I expect his good form to continue to the end of the season. I don't think it's enough to convince me that he should be our number 1 next season, and given the pressure that's on this rebuild over the summer and the transfers that we've got coming up, I'm not sure Michael Beale will put his faith in a young goalkeeper to man the fort over the next season, especially in what would be a Robbie McCrorie's first full season at that level, playing week in, week out for the first team. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I would want him to be part of the setup. I'll be interested to see if John McLaughlin hangs around this summer or goes out to try and play somewhere. But I would have Robbie McCrorie as number 2 next season and bring in an experienced goalkeeper. Bringing in any goalkeeper is a risk. We've seen it go wrong in the past for both us and other teams. We've seen it go really well in the past as well. It's all down to that recruitment and that suitability. Where do you see Robbie McCrorie's place in the team or the squad next season?
I think Ben's spot on. I think a matter of weeks ago, we probably thought, my goodness, we're going to need 3 goalkeepers in the summer. Robbie McCrorie is more than capable of being the Rangers number 1, but I think his performances in the 4 games that he's had show that he's going to be a more than able deputy as well. But I think he's the type of guy that will put pressure on. We are undoubtedly going to sign for what is to be believed Jack Butland. Jack Butland is already done and dusted from what I can gather. So he's going to come in and I think be the number 1. But Robbie McCrorie will be pushing and pushing and pushing. I think we'll potentially get maybe the cup games and that sort of situation. But I think John McLaughlin will probably move on. There is potential we might have to bring in a third choice keeper as well, just in case we don't want to go with one of the young boys as your third keeper. Just there's an element of risk if you don't have 3 keepers, But I think we will sign a keeper, which I believe to be Butland, and Robbie McCrorie will be the more than able deputy.
Yeah, Robert Binney comes into the comments, says still sign a keeper and let them battle out for the jersey. I think that's probably fair enough. If Jack Butland is the one to come in and he's strongly linked and strongly rumoured, then I believe he will come in believing he is the number 1 goalkeeper for next season. Doesn't mean that Robbie McCrorie can't challenge him and push him every step of the way, and that's what we want from not only our substitute goalkeeper, but our subs or those who are not in the starting lineup throughout the squad. We need people to constantly be pushing and constantly be challenging. I'm not convinced we've had that this season, maybe even last season as well. So I think having someone of Robbie McCrorie's quality as the number 2, he'll get to play cup games. He'll get to have that challenge for the number 1 spot, and I believe he would back himself as well to try and take that off whoever the incoming goalkeeper is. All it takes is 1 mistake or 2 mistakes from that goalkeeper, and Robbie McCrorie's got that number 1 jersey, and it's his to lose. So it'll be really interesting on that front. Just to finish off the Robbie McCrorie chat on this one before we move on to some other players in the squad. RFC 72 says he's done all he can. Every game he's played very well and saved our defence a good few times in those games as well. But we need to bring in another keeper to challenge for the number 1 shirt. I think that seems to be a bit of a consensus across the board on that one. People are impressed by McCrorie, but not quite got the full confidence of him being the number 1 going forward for the foreseeable future if he was to take up that slot next season. But I would expect him to be our number 2 unless he doesn't want that role personally and wants to go out and be a team's number 1, which he might well do, and we couldn't blame him if he does. Moving on, Ben, we'll move to left back. First of all, Borna Barisic has held that role for the last 4 years or so, maybe even 5. I think his performances have declined over the last year or so. He did well in the European run last season, but we've seen him caught out time and time again against Celtic or better opponents, particularly at the back post, or preventing, or not preventing, I should say, crosses coming into the box. Yesterday we saw a completely different style of left back. We saw a left back that is better defensively than Borna Barisic is, and I would say offers pretty much equal or is on equal footing in terms of going forward and the quality of crosses or the quality of positions that he's able to take up. What did you make of Ridvan Yilmaz yesterday, and did it encourage you going forward?
Yeah, encouraged is exactly what I was going to say. I thought he was solid. I thought definitely I would rather have him defensively than Borna. There's no doubt about that. I would maybe differ on. I think his crossing is an area that could improve a wee bit, and I think Borna's crossing is an asset to the team. But I do think he gives it a wee bit more balance in terms of you feel like you can rely on him defensively a wee bit more, and maybe that allows Tav to go a little bit more on the other side. So yeah, I thought really, really encouraging. He's another one who I wanted to get the opportunity, and thus far, is building. We have to remember as well that he hasn't played a lot of football, so I'm hoping over these 5 games he will improve each game. There was a lot of talk. There's been a lot of rumours, as there always is, that he wants to go back to Turkey and things like that. But to me, yesterday he looked like a player that was committed and that wanted to be there. So I'm encouraged in terms of that, his mentality as well. It looked like he was enjoying it, and he wanted to win with us, which is exactly what we need.
Yeah, there's plenty of people giving their opinions on this one in the comments. The Trying Scotsman says Ridvan can tackle, the son of the Moth can cross. Please don't hurt me, Mr. Moth. That's a reference to Borna Barisic's dad. If you're not aware, and if you're not aware, maybe worth a wee Google just to find out all the background story to that name. Scott Rangers on Tour says Borna will go in the summer. Will Robbie Fraser be back up to Yilmaz? Yilmaz snuffed out Abada so much. So the lad in front of me at Ibrox asked if he was playing. I thought the performance that Yilmaz had against Leo Abada, a player that has tormented us in some games in the last season or two, was really impressive. He wasn't scared to go stride for stride with him, and head as Abada was heading towards the byline, he pushed him inside and followed him all the way. He did well in situations we've seen Borna Barisic really struggle and in some cases crumble in the past, and I thought that was really encouraging. But he was also really aggressive in the tackle, and he won a fair few 50-50s and even some 70-30s that were in Celtic's favour as well. I was really encouraged by that performance yesterday, and that on top of what we saw from him against Aberdeen last week, I would be happy with Ridvan Yilmaz being our starting left back going into next season. Where do you land on that?
Aye, very much so. I thought he handled Abada very, very well. I mean, I think he was one of the guys that went off, and I think that was testimony to how well he had played. Rangers fans love a guy that gets stuck in and wins tackles, and he won more than a couple, and I think going forward, he offers a wee bit of variety. Now, I think that Borna, his delivery is top class, but I think at times it's very much cross it, and there isn't a lot of variation in that, and I mean that's not been detrimental to Borna. He's been a good player for us over the course, for a guy that we paid £2 million for. But Ridvan Yilmaz is very much the future, and I think just just a different style. I mean, he's only tiny. I mean, I'm not a big guy, but Ridvan Yilmaz is smaller than me, and he's, you know, he stood up for himself and got stuck in, which, you know, for a guy that's missed a lot of football this season, he's you know, with a lot of players with injuries and stuff, and he's had a difficult spell. You know, I mean, he came out back end of October, does his hamstring, he's out for 4 or 5 months. It's taken him, you know, I mean, injured in a foreign land when you're trying to get to grips with everything. You know, it's been a difficult season for him, you know, and I think on his social media he's came out and basically he was delighted, the first of hopefully many Old Firm wins that I think was something like that he said, you know. So that doesn't, to me, speak of a guy that's desperate to get back to his homeland, you know. So Borna's been good, but Ridvan is the future for me.
Yeah, I think he even won a few headers as well, which came as a nice surprise. Borna Barisic likes to pretend he's going for a header and see the ball out for a throw-in more often than not. So I was glad to see that one as well. Plenty of comments praising Ridvan Yilmaz coming in here. Cubby Cubstar says Yilmaz impressed me. Some great tackles at the right moments to win the ball and quick to get up the pitch. Final ball a bit rusty, just needs a pre-season and hopefully stays injury free. Ben, I know that's a point that you raised about his crossing. I was sitting beside Kyle at the game yesterday and he was saying the same thing. Robert Binney says Ridvan was excellent at defending. Darren Knock, Ridvan seems to be physically stronger than Barisic, and Barisic's bottle has been questioned against Celtic. Again, a comment that's been repeated a few times over the last few days. Shona McLean, Ridvan seems very highly rated across Europe. Definitely got to keep him. And then RFC 72, Ridvan actually stopped crosses coming to the box. Couldn't tell you how happy I was watching that. There seems to be a real swell of support for Ridvan Yilmaz, and we are, it seems, all in agreement about him going forward and the potential he has as our starting left back heading into next season. Next player on the list, and one that has been criticised quite heavily so far this season, not for what he's done on the pitch, but for the fact he's not been on the pitch very much, was John Souttar. Ben, I thought it was another solid performance from John Souttar yesterday. A fantastic header for the goal. I actually thought it was an own goal when I was in the stadium, just from the way the players kind of fell to the ground. But his desire to win that header is something that we've not really seen for quite a long time. Leon Balogun was potentially the closest we've had to a player like that that's just determined to win the ball at all costs in the opposition box. What did you make of John Souttar yesterday? And I believe that his performance yesterday, as well as against Aberdeen, has nudged him ahead of Ben Davies in terms of being that starting centre-half partner for Connor Goldson. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, he was already ahead. I mean, I'm not in the camp that I hate Davis or anything like that, but I've been impressed by Souttar, other than the first game of the season, which obviously there's mitigating circumstances and he was injured as well, and obviously that mistake against them at their place. But other than that, I think he's been really, really solid, and he's starting to look like, when I watched the Scottish Cup final last season, his performance against us, I was like, oh, we have a real player here. I was actually very excited about him coming in. And obviously through injury and stuff, we haven't been able to see that. But, I think he is starting to find his feet. And it's just, you're just always hoping that he doesn't get another injury. But that's just going to be the case. But, he's getting stronger with each game that he's playing. Anyone looks better. He does look better with Connor Goldson beside him, but any of our centre-halves seem to look better with Connor Goldson beside them. So the shirt is his to lose at this point for me, and he is a player that should be around, and is a good option, and is not somebody going into any game next season. If we're going into any game, whether we sign someone who maybe is ahead of him or not, I have a feeling we might. However, I wouldn't be worried going into any game with a fit, and that's the key word, a fit John Souttar playing. Yeah,
that's interesting that you suggest that we might sign a central defender that's ahead of him. I hadn't really considered that. If I was really thinking ahead to next season, if Ben Davies leaves, there's been plenty of rumours about whether he stays or
I'm thinking Davis probably goes.
Yeah, I think so too. So if Ben Davies goes, I'd fully expect John Souttar to step in and be our new starting centre half alongside Connor Goldson. I'd fully take on the point and the concerns around injuries that John Souttar's had in the past, and the need for a good quality backup. Scott, what's your thoughts on that one? Rangers on Tour opinion says John Souttar was excellent, never lost a header and bullied Celtic's centre half. I see you smiling there, probably still thinking back to your joke in the group chat about that one. I think looking at that game yesterday, Celtic barely had a sniff at goal. We spoke a bit earlier about the Matt O'Reilly chance. Outside of that one, O hit the post, but I thought, looking at the game, I thought he was offside by quite a considerable distance. I might be wrong, I've not seen it back, but I thought he was. Ben's shaking his head, so maybe he wasn't. But at the game, he looked.
I thought it at the time, but he wasn't.
Yeah, right. So we gave up 2 chances in the whole game from that perspective, including that one. I thought it was a really solid central defensive display from Souttar and Goldson. What did you make of John Souttar yesterday? And do you see him as a starter heading into next season?
I think, it's a bit of a pattern here. He's been excellent for a guy that's not played a lot of football, to be honest with you. I thought he made the mistake in the league game across there, but I thought he'd had a decent game, and that was without Connor Goldson. I thought he's done really, really well. I watched Tommy and Ross in the post-match at Ibrox yesterday talking about it, and I think they obviously referenced the right left, which it's one of my personal preferences. I like a balance of a natural right footer and a natural left footer, but that's again personal preference. But I thought they looked a good pairing. They looked as though there was good communication between the two. I think he's a bit of a talker. I don't think John Souttar needs to be talked through the game by Connor Goldson, if that makes sense. I think Ben Davies, for a guy that's a bit older, I think he needs to be sort of coached through the game a wee bit, and I think certainly going into next season, I think Ben Davies will go back down south. Dujon Sterling, I think, can play right back, left back, potentially started as a centre half, so he could be a backup option pretty much everywhere across the back four, including centre half. But I think if Ben Davies does go back down south, we will bring in a centre half. That's, just purely from a numbers point of view, because I think if you were to go in with Goldson and Souttar, and you just can't rely on John Souttar. He's looking great at the moment, and it was positive. He looked a good partnership yesterday, but I would worry that you would maybe leave yourself a little bit light. But great goal, that must do wonders for his confidence across what has been a difficult season. I think he obviously had a bereavement within his family at the start of the season. He's had injuries himself, and it's just been I think a nice way to end his season. He'll probably end up getting involved with Scotland at the end of the campaign, which doesn't fill me with a lot of glee, because personally I would rather that he rested up and came back for Rangers pre-season. But you referenced the goal. I genuinely thought it was an own goal, just purely the way. And watching it back, it's a bit fortuitous, just the way that he takes the header. But when you're in the stadium, I genuinely thought it had been an own goal, and it was only when he ran away and he was obviously celebrating. But I delighted for him, and I think again he's another one like Robbie McCrorie who's done himself no harm at all, and I hope that he gets the rest of the games alongside Connor Goldson.
Yeah, I think even when he was running away celebrating the goal, I was still a wee bit suspicious, thinking he's just claiming it. That was my first thoughts when he was running away there. But when you saw it, Kyle pulled up the replay of the goal at half time, and we saw it, and it was an absolute cracking header from John Souttar, and hopefully something we'll see more of going forward. Ben, an area of the pitch where we know is so important in these games is the midfield, and it's a battle where we've probably won it more often than we've won games this season. Looking back at it, there's probably 1 or 2 games where we've won that midfield battle, but then shot ourselves in the foot with some defensive mistakes. Yesterday, we completely and utterly steamrolled that midfield, and it surprised me a little bit given the personnel that made up that midfield three. We saw Raskin. I was going to go for Ross's Raskan pronunciation there and then thought better of it. We saw Nico Raskin almost sitting back a little bit and directing Ryan Jack and directing John Lundstrom where to go, and he really thrived in that role yesterday. You could tell he was up for the battle, and I've been really impressed by Nico Raskin since he came in, but yesterday he took it to a whole other level. Sorry, Ben, that one's for you. I don't know if you've frozen. Ben, are you with us?
I froze there. Sorry. You hear me now?
Can hear you now. We're just talking about Nico Raskin, and you can't hear us. Scott, we'll come to you instead for this one.
I thought he was excellent. I thought as the game progressed, I thought he got stronger and stronger. I think he's had a difficult spell since he came in. Hadn't played a lot of football, a bit like Todd Cantwell. Cantwell's obviously, he hit the ground running straight away. But I think I'm going to just go for Nico rather than getting into the pronunciation of his surname. And I think he just grew into the game. He was getting into I mean, he played one pass. I've not watched the game back, but there was one pass that basically down the right channel that sticks in my head, you know. And I think he was playing probably deeper than he has been, sort of thing. And I think another one that I think there's a lot more to come from him. I think a good he's obviously going away with Belgium to the under-21 tournament at the end of the season. Come back for that, get a good pre-season, and ready to kick on, you know. But I thought that was his best game for the club so far. He was really, really good. But I thought he was the best of the three in the middle of the park. But he was excellent.
Yeah, Ben, interested in your thoughts on Nico Raskin as well, and just bring in Cubby Cubster's comment here. Got to say, Lundstrom was on his game, Jack the same, but Raskin was the difference. Raskin needs quality players around him. Great midfield performance yesterday by all three. We saw that performance yesterday in terms of going forward. I believe Ryan Jack's going to sign a new contract very soon. That was probably expected, partly from a homegrown perspective. Michael Beale also highlighted that Ryan Jack has played 80 to 85% of games that Rangers have played this season, which is much higher than we've seen in previous years, and probably backs up the thought behind offering him a new contract. How excited are you by Nico Raskin, and how excited are you to see him with potentially even higher quality players around him?
Yeah, I'm very excited by him. I have been all along. You know, as soon as I saw him, I really bought into it. Maybe had a slight dip, but seems to be really, really finding his feet again. You know, he's young, hadn't played football for a long time, so there was going to be inconsistencies. But I think he, along with Cantwell, is the type of player that signing that you want to be building your team around. And if those two are what we can expect from Beale signings, I know they won't all be like that and they won't all be perfect, but you know, there's exciting things ahead. And at his age and with his ambitions, there is more to come from Nico. So yeah, I'm really, really, really encouraged. I would say that Ryan Jack makes those around him in the midfield better players. I think that any time that we've seen Lundstrom have good performances, particularly in the European run last season, Ryan Jack's in there with him. So, you know, I think he's a very important player. I've gone back and forth on it. At one stage, it was like, no, there's no way we should sign him. I'm surprised to hear that he played that much because it doesn't seem that to me. But, you know, that's just confirmation bias, isn't it? But I feel that if you can manage Ryan Jack, you're never going to get a full season out of him. If you can manage him and try and keep him, you know, at optimum levels for the important games, then he is an asset to a midfield. And it, if we don't have Ryan Jack, we need a Ryan Jack type player without a doubt in there. So I'm all for him getting a contract. When he got injured recently, again, I was saying, I don't know, but now that he's come back and shown that, he's just sort of it's like a reminder of what he can bring to us. And I feel like Raskin sort of suits playing with him in there as well. So it was a positive midfield. It was the midfield I would have gone for. It was probably the only midfield that we could have picked, but there was encouraging signs within it.
Yeah, Scott, just a final comment on the midfield before we move into the forward line. Kieran Dowell has been heavily rumoured to have already signed a contract with Rangers, which he'll arrive from Norwich once his contract there expires. Do you expect it to be an area where we strengthen even further than adding just one? And out of Lundstrom, Jack and Raskin, how many do you expect to be part of the starting midfield going into next season?
I would expect two of those three to be part of the starting lineup next season.
Which two?
I would say probably Ryan Jack and Nico Raskin. I think Lundstrom going into the last year of his contract. I don't think we'll be actively pushing him out the door, but I don't see a starting spot for him. I do. I mean, I've long held the opinion that I would like to see us sign a number 6. Somebody a young Stephen, like a 27-year-old Stephen Davis sort of situation, so that Raskin's further forward, sort of thing, But I think Lundstrom is probably. I don't think he merits an extended contract at this point. I don't think he's done enough across the 2 years since he came in to merit an extension. So we're in that he's going into the last 12 months. We did sign him for nothing. So if he leaves for nothing at the end of his 3 years, then that's fair enough. You've only, it's the wages across that period. But I think he might fancy as much as he probably enjoys life up here and enjoys playing for Rangers, I think he might fancy and there will probably be clubs interested down south. So I think we'll bring in potentially one in addition to Kieran Dowell, Craig.
Yeah, Scott, I noticed you went for Raskin and Raskin both in that answer, so you're not picking a side. That's fine. We'll looking at some comments, and we've got another topic that's kind of getting a lot of people in the comments talking. So I'll come to you on that one, Ben. But before we do, Joe 90 says if we can get something for Lundstrom, I'd take it in a second. He's inconsistent, and I assume that says one-dimensional. Whereas Shona McLean is completely on the other side of things and says Lundstrom is about to sign a new contract. From what I've heard, how do you see John Lundstrom's future at Rangers, and what is going to be the final year of his current contract?
Yeah, I if we got an offer coming in with money for him, with him being in the final year, then you sell him. You do. But I wouldn't mind him being around as an option, as a squad player. I wouldn't particularly like to see him as a starter in there. I would agree with Scott. The two that he said out of that 3 should be the starters for next season. But I, if we're going to get an offer from the Championship and bring in money for a player that we've haven't got enough out of, if I'm honest, for big wages, and we've brought in on a free, then I would definitely take the offer.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you on that one, and the same boat as Scott as well. If we get an offer for John Lundstrom, I would be very, very keen to look at it seriously. I think we're going to have to. We don't have a marquee player that's going to go for big money like Nathan Paterson did, or like Calvin Bassey did, even Joe Aribo to a certain extent. We're going to have to raise some funds for this refresh somehow, and that somehow is partially going to be by selling some of the players in the current squad. I think if you look at players like Ben Davies, like Glenn Kamara, like John Lundstrom, potentially Yanis Hadji or Rabi Matondo, who we're going to come on to shortly. You look at these guys, they can go for 1, 2, 3, maybe £4 million at a push, and that if you sell 4 or 5 guys, that quickly adds up and gives you a fairly hefty addition to the transfer kitty, and we've got to be realistic about that and how that's built. Yes, the board will already have a certain amount set aside, and Michael Beale's hinted at how big that is, but we've got a lot of change that we need to take place this summer, and that doesn't happen by keeping all these guys on the wage bill, even if the likes of Alfredo Morelos and Ryan Kent are leaving and their hefty wages are no longer required next season. You're still looking at ways that you can expand that transfer kitty or raise that transfer fund, and maybe some of the players that do have some value in them but are on the fringes of the first team are definitely going to be targeted as being squad players next season. That's where we can try and raise those funds. So it'll be interesting heading into next season. Before we move on to Robbie Matondo, Scott, I'm going to come to you because there's a lot of arguing going on in the comments. Should we or should we not sign Leon Balogun for Rangers next season?
I saw the big man going into the stadium yesterday. So no, listen, Leon Balogun was a good player for Rangers, but let's look forward, not backwards. I think we, as a support, we have there's a bit of nostalgia, as to what certain players have achieved when they've, when they've left. And, at the end of the day, QPR are just outside the relegation battle, which that doesn't mean that Leon Balogun's been playing like Franco Baresi for the whole season. Listen, he was a decent player for Rangers, gave us a couple of good years, will always be welcome back. But no, his time as a Rangers player within the side moving forwards. We're trying to create a pathway for Leon King and bringing in Dujon Sterling and young, fresh, hungry guys, signing guys at 33, 34. No, the days of being a retirement home and giving guys too much money are in the past.
Joe 90 agrees with you. He says we shouldn't have let him go, but we can't live in the past. Nostalgia has cost us too much recently, and I don't think that's more prevalent anywhere than when you look at our front line and the likes of Alfredo Morelos and Ryan Kent, who are two players that have probably started a lot more games because of what they've done in the past than what they're giving Rangers now. And I think that's where we have seen some difficulty in terms of around that nostalgia piece, and we very much are in a situation where we need to keep looking forward. Ben, time is marching on, so let's take the front line as a whole and get your thoughts on that one. I said yesterday that Rangers will need a full refresh of the starting front three, both a left winger, a right winger, and a main striker. That doesn't come cheap, especially at that end of the pitch. That's where most of the bigger transfers do come, and we'll need to spend decent money if we're going to get players who are going to have the proven track record, but also come in with quality. Robbie Matondo has been getting his chance the last few games. I think he's shown up better than he has any other time so far in his Rangers career. Yanis Hadji's been getting a little bit more game time, but probably not as much game time as he would have wanted. Todd Cantwell, we'll come on to Todd Cantwell's performance in a second, but I'm not quite sure I've seen anyone grab an Old Firm game like that for us by the scruff of the neck in a long, long time. Of that front three, though, what did you make of it yesterday? What did you make of the likes of Robbie Matondo, Yanis Hadji? And do you agree in terms of that being, I guess, the area where the most significant portion of our transfer kit is going to go this summer?
Yeah, that's where we need to spend the money without any doubt. I feel like, Matondo has improved, is certainly trying. I have my doubts, although I'm not going to make a decision as of yet, but I have my doubts on whether he will ever reach the level that we need him to reach. I feel that he is a decent player. He's trying very hard, but I question whether there's going to be any end product coming from him. And that essentially is what we need. And that's, we've suffered from Ryan Kent being there for so long and looking all right and trying, but not producing the numbers. And it always comes back to the numbers with those front players, and I just don't feel like Matondo is gonna get there for us, unfortunately. Hope to be proved wrong, but don't think I will.
Scott, I think that's an interesting point from Ben in terms of Matondo has shown decent flashes, but again, he doesn't provide that end product that we want to see and that we expect to see from a wide player at Rangers. I'd have to agree with that. I think at times we become a bit rose-tinted glasses towards some players and what we should be expecting from players in those positions. We've seen for the team across the other side of the city that these players should be getting double-figure goals each season and should be pushing for double-figure assists as well. And we've been getting nowhere near that from our wide players. Ryan Kent's stats are there for everyone to see, and that they're disgraceful. If we're brutally honest, Ryan Kent's stats are disgraceful now. There's a lot of people saying, he's the man that makes a difference because of the runs he makes, and he's the man that gets the assist before the assist and all that sort of stuff. That is largely excuses for many people, I think, on that front to try and justify why Ryan Kent was seen as one of our better players. He was part of the team that got us to the European final, and always be grateful for that and his contribution to that as well. Some of the crosses and for some of the most important goals of that run came from Ryan Kent. But we need to, what he's shown this season has been a shadow of that, and we need much more from our wide players. Do you expect to see big change and big investment in that area of the squad this summer?
To be honest, I don't know what the budget's going to be, but I think the vast majority of it, that's where it needs to be spent. That's the major difference between us and them, to be perfectly honest with you. We haven't been clinical enough in particularly since Beale came in. We've had opportunities to go ahead in the Old Firm game, and the first goal in these matches is vital, and we've missed big opportunities. I thought Sakala and Matondo gave you what Sakala and Matondo give you yesterday, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It was like every control, every run, and every sort of cross pass, shot, whatever you want to call it, is an adventure, I think, for both of them. You just can't predict what either of them are going to do. Wouldn't have an issue if they were both within the squad next season, but I don't think a starting Rangers 11 next season will have either Fashion Sakala or Robbie Matondo. The one thing is, Robbie Matondo, at least he's had a season that's been a bit of a car crash as well, but at least coming into these games, if scouts are watching, if we are active, if his agent's maybe trying to, at least he's in these matches, and some team might fancy taking this is a guy that's went for a lot of money during his career so far, so he's probably got the sort of skill set that some sides go for. But I think, I don't expect Todd Cantwell to play almost as the sort of false nine that he was doing yesterday, sort of thing, But I think the front three, I would expect a whole new front three to start next season, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, he's either got the skill set that many clubs look for or a very good agent, and I'm not quite sure which one, but it's worked for him so far in his career. Cubby Cubster says quality of pass and the finish in the final third are not good enough. We've dropped too many points because of this. Ben, another point, Paul McGarrigle comes in and says people look across the city and think we should be like that, but we play a different style. I don't think our style should mean that our wingers or wider players in the forward areas get any fewer chances or have any less opportunity to create assists or score goals. Do you think it's fair that we can look across the city and say that's what we are missing or that's what we need?
No, I don't think we need to have the same style to have the same numbers. You can play your own way, but either them or us will dominate most games, all games basically, apart from against each other. And therefore your forward players should be creating and scoring more goals on a consistent basis. whatever way you want to play, whether you want to play with wider, way you don't. We have the ball. It's about having that creativity and turning what we have into chances and goals.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ultimately, we need to score more goals than we've been scoring in recent years. Alfredo Morelos' numbers show that up majorly. I think Alfredo Morelos' best goal scoring season for us in the league is 17 goals. That's nowhere near good enough for a starting Rangers striker, never mind a guy who's been the main man for 5 seasons. So I think going forward, we need better than Alfredo Morelos for all that he's given us major moments, and I love him for a lot of those moments, especially the European ones. We need better than Alfredo Morelos going forward, and hopefully the scouting department and the Michael Beale are well down the line in terms of bringing someone of that quality in. Before we go on to talking about the fixture and whether we think away fans should be part of it, or whether away fans would improve the fixture in any way, there was a lot of talk about the atmosphere yesterday. I want to give you both a moment, and we'll start with you, Scott, to talk about Todd Cantwell yesterday and his performance. It was something that we've not seen for a long time from a Rangers player, and it was really impressive.
Listen, I just love his sort of swagger, arrogance, whatever you want to call it. I think in the 3 or 4 months since he came in, he's got absolutely no respect for that mob. I think it's very obvious that he knows what it's about. He's far feistier and gets stuck in far more. I don't know if it's just the sort of the look that he's got. You just expected this sort of boy that's just going to like play like nice tippy tappy passes and all that sort of stuff, but I think he's adding goals, in recent weeks as well, and I think that's an area that I think Michael Beale will be pushing him to try and get. You've not got Tillman in the side who has contributed a lot of goals, but Todd Cantwell, there would be an argument that he has, and this is crazy, that he has almost been her player of the year. And that sounds absolutely nuts. But when you look at the 3 names that are on the list, Todd Cantwell would have been a worthy 4th edition, which basically talks how well he has contributed since he came in. I just look forward to him having better options ahead of him that are going to make his job a lot easier. There's the clip kicking about with his twist and turn on the Govan stand side yesterday. I'm too old to have heroes. My hero is Alfredo and about to leave the building sort of thing, but if my wee boy's looking for a hero moving forward, Todd Cantwell's got all the characteristics, and if you get better players alongside him and Nico in the middle of the park, I think we'll have a far more successful season next year.
Yeah, Ben, I think Scott's spoken really well there on Todd Cantwell. He's a player that, as Rangers fans, we've loved pretty much from the moment that he pulled on a Rangers jersey and stepped foot on the pitch at Ibrox. He's come in for a bit of criticism, mainly from the mainstream media and fans of opposition clubs around. We think he's great, and he's been man of the match, and I think all but one of his performances for Rangers so far. And he's received a lot of criticism from other fans of other clubs who say he's nowhere near that good. Rangers fans are trying to build him up. I think yesterday he showed how good he can be, and I believe there's still more to come. Yeah,
I mean, it was as dominant a performance as I've seen from one player in this fixture for a long time for us. I feel like he's the type of player that looks like he's going to drive standards throughout the club and throughout the new players that are coming in. And, I don't know if, obviously, we used being at the game, I don't know if you heard his interview before the game and stuff, but he was talking about next year, and he's talking about how much he's really bought into the club and how he's going to take new signings under his wing and sort of, make sure that they are where they need to be and doing what they need to do for this club. He really seems driven for success. His career was going one way, and he seems to really want to get it back on track. It's interesting when we were linked with him, and maybe this is just looking at him as Scott says and how he looks and stuff. But one of the things that I'd heard as well was, he doesn't handle pressure well and those sort of things. He seems to thrive under it. He seems to embrace it, take it on, and let's go. It was like at points yesterday, it was like it was his ball, and he was letting others play at times, but he was just strutting about that pitch and controlling the game, and he's not going to back down to anything, confrontation wise as well, which maybe looking at him you wouldn't have assumed, but he's the type of player that we need to be building our team around, and he's the type of player that if he keeps going the way he's going, we'll get a couple of good years out of him, and we might make a tiny profit, and he'll go back down south.
Yeah, we did sign him for £1.5 million, so hopefully we make much more than a tiny profit on him. I think he'll be one a few years ago it was £50 million he was being touted around for. I'm not quite sure.
Tiny.
Not quite sure we'll receive that, but we'll definitely give it a good shot. I think John sums it up well here in the comments when he says most dominant Old Firm display since Barry in 2005. And Scott, I know that's an opinion you share as well. We're over the hour mark. I'm just going to round off the podcast with the small discussion about away fans and whether they should be allowed in to Old Firm games moving forward. Given my personal opinion, I enjoyed the atmosphere at Ibrox yesterday, but I preferred when there was a section of away fans in those games. It added a bit extra to it yesterday, maybe because of the situation, because of the context of the season. It was never going to be that absolutely rocking Ibrox that we've seen before in the big games. I thought yesterday's atmosphere was really good. John Suter spoke about how it drove the team on, and you can definitely see the advantage that it gives to whichever team is playing at home, and you can see the disadvantage that it gives to any team that's playing away in this fixture. Now, I would prefer to have away fans there. A lot of it comes down to policing, a lot of it comes down to safety. Ideal world, I'd probably give them the European allocation, the same allocation we gave to Raith Rovers earlier this season, the same allocation we gave to Partick Thistle earlier this season, gave it to the likes of Dortmund last season, gave it to the likes of Liverpool in the Champions League as well. Scott, come to you first of all on that. I see you're delighted about that. What thoughts on the away allocation, and one, what you would like to see, and two, what you think will happen?
Listen, as one of the older podders, I've been across the city, and there's been 18,000, 20,000 Rangers fans, 8,000 Rangers fans. Those were the days that I really enjoyed Old Firm games. On the world is the landscape's changed now. Obviously, Rangers back in 2018, I think it was probably the summer that Steven Gerrard came in, made the decision that the allocation was getting cut. I don't see it going back. I don't think, from a policing point of view, that the European, I know people say, well, if it works for European games, I just think an Old Firm game, split stands and that sort of situation, I just think it could be quite difficult for them. I don't think the police would be keen on it. It's the only way we go, if we were to go back to 8,000 Celtic fans at Ibrox, we have to get 8,000 at Celtic Park, but it has to be right behind the goals, no stuck in the corner sort of situation. They have a huge, it's not an advantage, but it's not a level playing field when they come and they run down the tunnel and they look to their left hand side, they've got the full stand. We run out the tunnel, go to the right, and like a third of our support stuck in the corner behind pillars and all that sort of situation, So I think we're now in a situation where it's going to be the corner of both stadiums or no tickets at all. I don't think there's any relationship between the two boards. I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any dialogue. That may change with James Bisgrove and John Bennett potentially, but I don't see I think the allocation will be what happened yesterday or what it was for the last 3 or 4 seasons in the 800-900 stuck in the corner.
Yeah, Robert Robertson is in the comments and says, we give them prime seats. They give us a poxy corner with restrictive views. Unless that changes, keep them out. That kind of reflects what you've said there, Scott. John says, atmosphere was great yesterday. I think it was really good. I've not denied that. I just think it's been better and it can be better. And I think having an away section or section of away fans definitely contributes to that, and it contributes to the intensity of the fixture as well on that front. For me, Paul McGarrigle, personally it won't happen as we have sold the seats for season tickets. If anything, the bare minimum. John Weir, Euro allocation for me, although give them BF1 and BR1 so they are out of view. I don't imagine BF1 will be anywhere near in Celtic fans' hands if I'm
stick them into BF1. Sky will love that. Stick them in with the Union Bears.
I'm sure the police would love that one as well. Shona McLean, I prefer it with no away fans. They were rattled yesterday. Atmosphere was unreal. It's really interesting to see the breadth of views on this topic. Ben, I'm not entirely sure the club are able to win any way that they go with it. What are your thoughts on the situation? CGM 55 just coming in there saying the away fan issue stems from the basic problem that Ibrox is too small. If it was bigger, we could have away fans. Simple. I'm not entirely sure I agree with that one. We had away fans beforehand. We have away fans every other game. It's just part and parcel of football, and it's part of the spectacle of football as well. What are your thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that the fixture in general, whether it's at their place or it's at Ibrox, is better with away fans. It adds intensity, it adds fuel to the fire, it adds to the tension. And it benefits all around. I can understand people wanting just that, partisan atmosphere, but you still get that. It almost, I feel like when there's the away fans there, particularly in the days when there used to be a lot more, it almost gets more out of our fans, because you're going back at them harder and further. And I think the league in general, we owe nothing to the league, but the league in general benefits from having the attention that is drawn to the game would be more as well if there's away fans. I don't see it happening anytime soon due to the relationships between the two clubs, and neither are going to budge on it first. But I would be in favour of it changing.
Yeah, we'll just round off with a few comments. James Glasgow says, should it not be a percentage rather than a set amount? I think that is supposed to be a percentage. I believe the clubs agreed on a bigger number than that percentage to get to the 8,000 that Scott had mentioned beforehand that was there previously. I believe that was an agreement between the clubs. There's no reason why that couldn't, in theory, happen again. Whether it will or not remains to be seen. I doubt it. Broxy the Bear says, should be 8k each, as it's brilliant to have it back, but will never happen. Robert Binney, keep them out. David Hutchison, better atmosphere with away fans in Man. There's a real range of opinions on this one, and like I said, I'm not quite sure there's a situation where the board can win here. It's going to have to be what's deemed the best. I'm of the opinion the board probably see the money in their pocket as being the best view for Rangers and the best way for Rangers to try to give themselves the best chance to prosper. So I would be surprised if we see any sort of big allocation return. Celtic seem to be pushing back on the smaller allocations. They keep trotting out the whole safety aspect of it. I'm not sure any away support in any Old Firm game has ever been entirely safe, if we're truly honest, although although Celtic fans do try and paint themselves as holier than thou, and on that one, so I don't think that's going to change in any way. Please do keep your comment on this coming in. Keep your comments coming in on the refresh, on the performances of certain players against Celtic. We've discussed plenty of them today. We'll round off the podcast here, an hour and 15 minutes in, and thank you everyone for joining us after what was a slight technical hiccup at the start, but we made it through. Scott, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. It's been really enjoyable. We could have kept on going for a good bit yet.
Yeah, we absolutely could have. And Ben, thank you very much to yourself as well.
Yes, cheers. It's nice to be doing it and not be therapeutic.
Yeah, it's been a bit too much on the cathartic side of Old Firm games this season. Let's hope for more positive ones as we go forward. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Please do like the video and leave a comment if you've enjoyed the content. It really helps us reach more people and more Rangers fans and build a bigger audience. So please do that. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to the show on whatever podcast platform is your favourite. Toggle on those notifications as well, so you get an email or a notification every single time we go live. In terms of what we've got coming up this week, I'll be back tomorrow night as we start to look ahead to, I guess, the bigger picture. We've done a little bit of it tonight. We'll look a bit more at some of the transfer rumours, at some of the positions in the team and the squad that we feel that money has to be really spent, and we'll look more at the comment from Michael Beale as well, that he's actually spending the vast majority of his time going and looking at players and meet transfer targets. And he actually said yesterday that he has to remind himself sometimes to stop and prepare for the upcoming game, which normally would be an extremely bad thing for our manager to say, but I think on this occasion it's actually a positive one. So join us tomorrow night for that, live at 6:30 PM, and you'll be able to catch us on YouTube if you can't join us live. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.